Hi, my name is Alesha. Welcome to my channel. Here is a shorter practice of gentle yoga for regular people. Just because you're regular doesn't mean you're not extraordinary, but we'll get going with just a few props. So if you happen to have a blanket handy, feel free to grab that and fold it up. I like a firmer blanket, which tends to be a little bit thinner. And if you don't have a yoga block, you can just grab a couple of sturdy books and we'll get going. So if you have your folded blanket handy, you can fold it into half and then a quarter and then bring it down lengthways on your mat, and this will be supporting your upper back and your head. Once you have that set up, feel free to sit on your mat in line with that support. So your hips are just in front of it, and lower on down onto your forearms and let your head and upper back rest down. If you have a longer blanket, it might even be supporting your whole back, and that's fine. Now, if you're here and you feel like your head's kind of falling back behind you and you have the blanket underneath, then just roll it up a little bit under your head. So your head might actually be a little higher or in line with your chest. If you feel all right with your legs bent, feel free to stay there, or perhaps you reach your legs out long. So we're going into a supported fish, and it's a little more gentle than versions with big blocks under the upper back and head. And then check in with your arms. So you might feel comfortable just letting your hands rest on your belly here. Or if you want a bigger stretch throughout your chest, you could bring your arms out about 45 degrees so your hands are kind of in line with your hips. If you're looking for a really big stretch, you could bring your arms out like a goddess arm or a cactus arm with your elbows in line with shoulders and palms facing up towards the ceiling. If you like, you can soften your gaze, or maybe you close your eyes here for a minute or two. And here you might notice that the position of your back can allow for the front of your ribs to move a little bit and free up the breath towards the front of your body. And see if you could allow your chest to expand, your ribs to expand, your belly, your back as you breathe in. And then allow everything to soften as you breathe out. So belly softens back, your chest, everything sinking down a little bit. And then while you're here, see if you can soften a little bit throughout your fingers or your toes. And whatever doesn't need to work can just let go. I'll invite you to stay here for just 3 more breaths. So going to your own pace, your own body time. Notice your last breath right here. And let your breath go all the way out. Now, when you're ready to release from this shape, you can start to bend your knees. If your legs were straightened, land your feet down. Then from here, bring your hands behind your head and lift your head up with your hands and your arms so that your chin is towards your chest and there's little effort throughout your neck. Then eventually bring your arms down by your sides and press straight up with your hands. From here, you can move your blanket out of the way if you're using it. And I'll invite you to make your way back down. So you could roll over to your side and then lay down onto your back. We'll do a little reclined windshield wiper here. So allow your knees to drift over towards your right side and then over towards your left side. And this might be a little tiny movement. It might be a generous movement if you're feeling like you have a lot of energy and it's feeling good on your low back and hips. And if you're really connected with your breath, you might notice a breath in one direction and maybe a breath out in the other direction. And if you're feeling okay, just right here, stay as you are. Or if you'd like to also add your upper body, reach your hands towards the ceiling and clasp opposite elbows so that your forearms are above your chest. And then with your forearms above your chest, send your elbows in the opposite direction of your knees so you start to look like a Z shape, swishing from side to side. Your gaze might follow your arms. If you're not familiar with Z, it's Z in American. Still breathing, still moving. And then just one more swish each way. From here, return to center and hug both of your knees in towards your chest. You might hold either around your shins or behind your knees. Sometimes holding behind the knees puts a little less pressure in the knees themselves. And hold your legs in any amount. Now, if you're feeling great here in stillness, stay as you are. Or perhaps you draw circles with your knees going in one direction. And then other direction. Just a few times. Waking up through the hips and back. And eventually return to center. Allow your feet to land down and roll over to your side with your head supported just for a breath or two. In your own time, use your top hand to press down into the floor and rise up to a tabletop posture. So that'll look like your knees are under your hips and your hands could be under your shoulders. Now, if you're here and your wrists feel a little bit tender, you could always land your fists down onto the floor. That's totally fine. Just go to a place where you're feeling fairly comfortable, and if you notice there's a lot of pressure under your knees, then just put that blanket under there. Now, from here, see if you could tilt your hips up, lower your belly down, and then reach your chest forward as you lengthen through your neck and take a breath in. As you exhale, tuck your hips under and round under for cat. And we'll do that a few times. So inhale, cow, sway forward. Exhale, curl everything under and press up between your shoulder blades. Inhale, widen through your collarbones. Exhale, curl under. And then take a few at your own pace, your own breath. Maybe you find one direction feels really good. You want to stay there for a couple breaths, or maybe you find a little sway of the hips or a shake of your head. And then just one more each way. From here, return to center. And then think about how you want to come up towards ragdoll. So it might make sense for your hands to walk back towards your feet and then come into a standing forward fold, or it might make sense for your body to step your feet forward towards your hands. And if you need a little space for your torso, you could always take the block or books stacked under the hands and then step forward. Either way, you can come up with your feet on the ground and folding forward. You could fold forward any amount. So if you're looking for support for your low back today, you could always bend your knees generously and have your forearms on your thighs as you lengthen through the spine. Or if you feel okay just keeping the legs awake and then dangling forward, go right ahead. Go to a kind and breathable shape. Now if you're fairly far forward, you might gently shake your head from side to side. Or no matter where you are, you might even choose to shake your hips from side to side, just wake up through the legs a little bit more. And then see if you could stay here for 3 more breaths. Now you might notice as you shift your body around, your breath will shift and change. Just stay with it. 1 more breath. And then let it go out. This time, press into your feet strongly. Inhale, halfway lift. Your hands could be to your shins or your knees. And then lengthen really long through the spine from your tailbone to the top of your head. And it might even feel like you're drawing your shoulders down a little bit towards your hips. 1 more breath. Let the breath go out. Press into your feet. Knees might be a little bit softer here and rise up to mountain. So mountain's just standing. But see if you can stand tall. And then we'll add a little bit of movement to this. So we'll come into sun breaths. Now if your shoulders are feeling a little sticky, you could always just reach your arms forward and up, and that's fine. Or if you're feeling okay in the shoulders today, you could reach your arms out by your sides and then up. And then we'll add breath. So inhale, reach your arms up any which way. Eventually palms can touch overhead, and then lower your hands through the center of your heart space. Inhale, reach up. And exhale, hands lower down. Now if this is feeling like a lot, you could always make your movement a little bit smaller. Maybe the arms don't go as high. Still keeping the feet secure on the ground as you grow tall. Inhale to rise. And exhale, let your hands lower down. Moving with breath. Just a couple more like that. So inhale, lift up. Exhale, hands float down. 1 last time. Breath in. Breath out. Standing tall in mountain. From here, I'll invite you to come into a side bend. So you can land your left hand down to your hip, flip your right palm up, and lean over towards the left side. So your hips might go a little right as your arm reaches up. And you could stay here with your left hand on hip or thigh for support. Or if you like, you could hold onto your top wrist and tug slightly up and over for another version of crescent moon. Just open through the waist here a little bit. Staying for a couple more breaths. Last breath in. Let the breath go out. Rise up. Hands lower, find your mountain. Switch sides. So right hand could rest on thigh or hip, left palm faces up, reach up and over, hips go a little left, but see if you could still keep grounded in both feet. Now if it feels okay in your neck, you could always look forward, or maybe you even look up a little bit. You might even choose again to clasp the top wrist and just find a side stretch here. Settle in here for a couple more breaths. Last breath in. And let it go out. Rise up. Hand lowers. We'll do a couple shoulder loops. You can inhale, reach your shoulders up towards your ears, and then gently send your shoulders back and down. Inhale, rise. And exhale, soften. Inhale to lift. Exhale, lower. And sometimes I just feel like I'm letting go of a heavy bag at the end of the day. So just letting it drop. A couple more just like that. Lifting, breathing in. Softening, breathing out. One more. And then let it go. From here, I'll invite you to come into a balancing posture, tree. So if you're by a wall, you could actually use a hand on the wall for balance. And you can choose a variation of ways. So you could press into your right foot, bend your opposite knee, and then bring your knee out to the side. And you might have a little kickstand here with your toes in the ground and heel above opposite ankle. Sometimes it feels more stable to keep that extra foundation. Perhaps you choose to bring your foot up onto your calf, or if you feel really adventurous, onto your thigh. Your hands could always stay low, maybe they're heart center, or you might even choose to reach up. Now if you're reaching straight up and this feels a little bit sticky in your shoulders, you could always find a YMCA arm. So finding the Y. See if you could stay for 3 more breaths. So we're staying steady, even if that means you have a hand on the wall. One more breath in. And then let it go out. Every day is different, so today I am wobbly. Bring your knee forward, plant both feet down, arms lower down, and you might shake out the feet a little bit here. This time, press into your left foot, bend your opposite knee, guide it out to the side, and then choose your stance. So you might be a little asymmetrical here, so you might adjust your stance accordingly. Maybe you have your toes down on the side, or maybe bring your foot up a little higher onto your calf, or even onto your thigh. And start to choose your arms. One hand could be on a wall. Hands could reach up. And then once you're committed to the shape here, keep your gaze focused on something that doesn't move, but soft. Just 3 breaths. Last breath in, and then let it go out. Hands come down, knee forward, feet plant. And maybe a shimmy, shake it out. We'll strengthen the legs a little bit more, so if you're facing towards the front of your mat, face a long edge of your mat, and then bring your feet out a little bit wider than your hips. I like toes pointing out just a little bit for this one, but if it feels funky on your hips and knees, then point them a little more forward. We'll come into a side lunge or skater. So from here, imagine you're sending your bum back into a wall as you bend your right knee and keep your left leg towards straight. Then when you're ready, press into your right foot and come upright. Both legs are straight. This time, bend your left knee as you send your hips back behind you. So we're finding a deep hip hinge, and you might even bring your hands to your hips to feel that as you keep your right leg towards straight. Then Press into your left foot, rise up to center. And we'll switch sides. So right knee bends, hips go back. And then come back up to center. This time, left knee bends, hips guide back behind you, almost like there's a chair there. There's no chair, it's just your legs doing the work. And then press up to center. Now, if this is feeling great with your hands down lower, know that you can stay there. Or maybe this time you bend your right knee as your hips guide back behind you. And then bring your arms out wide. Then bend your right elbow. So it's almost like you're a speed skater. See if you could stay here for 3 more breaths. You might feel something going on in your body. I feel a little bit warm. Stick with it. Last breath. And then when you're ready, press into your feet. Rise up tall. Hands come down. Legs straighten. And we'll try the other side. So guide your hips back as you bend your left knee, hinging at the hips, and finding a proud chest. So a little tiny lift of the chest. Option to stay here with hands low, or you could reach your arms out to the side and then bend your left elbow so your thumb is kind of in front of your chest. And we'll stay here for 3. Long, tall spine. Last breath in. Full empty. Ground down through your feet. Rise on up. And then from here we can come into temple. So pivot your toes a little more forward if they're turned out. You might even clasp your hands up overhead, but if that's feeling like a lot, you could bring your hands to the center of your heart space. And we'll lean a little bit over towards the left side. So keep steady in the feet as you open out through the right side waist. One more long, full breath in here. And then let it go out. Breath in, rise on up. Now if you had your hands clasped, you could change the other direction. And maybe your fingertips point up and thumbs go behind you. And then lean over towards your right side and just explore what the stretch is like in this direction. Keep your legs awake. Just a couple more breaths. One more long, full breath in. Let it go out. Inhale, rise on up. Breath out, hands lower down. And honestly, as long as you're breathing, doesn't really matter if you coordinate it or not. But sometimes it's helpful. So you can start to walk your feet in and then find mountain at the front of your mat. Now, if you used the blocks or the books to come upright, you might bring those in front of you again to make your way down towards the floor. So hinge at your hips, send your bum back behind you and land your hands down on the blocks or your books or even the floor if you have long arms. Then press into your right foot and step your left leg back until you land your knee down. So we'll come into a low lunge. You might like a little something under your back knee. So if you have that blanket handy, you can bring that under there. Now, if you're working on balance here, it's totally okay to stay right here as you are. If you like, you could bring your left hand pressing down into the floor or your supports. And even if you need a little more space or to relieve tension from your left wrist, you could bring your fist onto that support. Then bring your right hand to your right thigh and see if you can inhale, get a little bit longer and taller through your spine. And as you exhale, twist to your right side. So you might feel like you're opening the chest to the right as you ground down through your back leg and your whole front foot. Option to stay right here with your hand down low, or perhaps you reach your right arm up. Now your gaze could be straight out to the side, that's totally okay. Or maybe you even look up towards your top thumb. See if you can maintain your breath here. So if it feels like you can't breathe, you might just need to ease off a little bit, and that's okay. Stick with your next 3 breaths. Filling up through the rib cage as you breathe in, and letting the ribs soften as you breathe out. Last breath in. Exhale, unwind. You can plant your hands down or fists down on the floor or your supports, and then this time step your right foot back and land your right knee down. Now if you're using the support under your left knee, you could switch it over to the right side, and this time we'll scoot the left foot forward. So sometimes we feel a little bit stuck here. If that's you, you could always press into your right hand, pick up your left ankle, and then bring your foot forward that way. So we'll go into that low lunge, second side. Now if you're feeling like you're working on balance here, know that it's totally okay to stay as you are or return into the shape. And maybe you just find length and a little gentle puff of your chest forward here. If you're wanting to come into the twist, you could bring your supports under your right hand or maybe even your right fist. Find that long spine as you inhale, and as you exhale, your left hand could go to left thigh, and a little twist to the left side. Maybe you even reach your left arm up to the ceiling, or if you're outside, the sky. And again, your gaze could be straight out to the horizon, or maybe you even look up if it doesn't feel too crunchy on your neck today. If it does, just look towards the side again. Settle in here for 3 breaths. So strong legs, strong foundation, allowing the space throughout the upper back here to turn. One last breath. And then as you exhale, unwind. Ground down your hands on your supports or the floor and step back to table. From here, you can locate your little blanket and then sit on it. And we'll come into a seated butterfly posture. So I find that this elevation of the hips brings a little more space for my low back. So that's why I prefer it. If you don't have a blanket handy, you could actually just roll up the back of your mat and sit on that, or find something. Now, you can start to bring your soles of feet together and your knees out wide. Now, depending on your hip structure, you actually might have your knees up quite high towards your arms. And that's fine, as long as you're getting a bit of a stretch. Some of you might even have your knees down towards the floor. I'm kind of just in the middle, and I feel pretty good here. I can breathe. Now, if you're looking for a little support, you feel like the stretch on the inner thighs is quite a lot, you could actually take your books or your blocks and bring them under your legs so that your knees and upper thighs are supported. Now, if you're feeling a bit of a stretch here into the hips, thighs, and even the low back, know that it's totally okay to stay as you are. If you don't feel a whole lot yet, then maybe you choose to hinge at your hips, almost like that cat shape from earlier. So you're tilting your hips forward and coming forward with a long, tall spine to start. I like to hold on to my ankles or my feet, but you might have a little support with your hands on your mat or on the floor. And this could be a great place to stay. Sometimes with a few breaths, you might find you could fold forward a little bit more, but no worries if you don't. Wherever you are today is okay. And then see if you could stay here for 5 breaths. Now here you might even feel the breath, or the pressure of the breath, go a little bit towards your back body, or even towards your lower back. Or maybe you feel something else. So just feel what you feel. One more long, full breath in. And then let it go out. Now if you're folded forward, give yourself time to come up. You could press into your hands, walk your torso up. I like to give my legs a literal hand. So you can bring your hands on either side of your knees and then bring your legs up. If you had some props, bring them out to the side. You might like them in a moment, so just keep them handy. Your blocks or your books. And I'll invite you to make your way down onto your mat again. And just get there however you get there. It doesn't have to be fancy. From here, you can land your feet down and bend your knees once again. If you're laying here flat on the ground and you feel like there's a lot of space between your head and the floor, or your neck is working really hard, you could actually grab that blanket and put it under your head. I'll invite you to come into a recline twist. So allow both of your knees to drop over to your right side, and you might have those books or blocks handy to support your knees as your arms reach out to the sides. Now you might have capital T arms, or you might have that cactus arm with elbows bent. You might choose to keep your gaze towards the center, or if it feels like your neck is free and you want to look over to your left side, go right ahead. And I'll invite you to settle in here for 5 slow, steady breaths. Notice your next breath in. And then let it go out. Eventually bring your head back up to center if it's turned. Press down into your shoulders and allow your leg shape to come back up. Now if you're using your props, you can bring them over to the other side. Knees now drift over towards your left. And they might be stacked, but if it feels okay on your low back, it feels a little more spacious to have your legs askew, then go ahead and do that. And then choose your gaze once again. So you might keep your head centered, or you might look out to the right. You could even soften your eyes a little bit here or close them, and then stay for 5 breaths. So we're just opening some space between the right hip and right shoulder. And then stay for your next breath in. Let it go out. Eventually bring your head back to the middle, your legs back to the middle. And you can choose here. You might bring both knees in towards your chest, give yourself a little squeeze. Or maybe you come into happy baby where you bring your soles of feet up towards the ceiling and your knees towards your underarms. And you can really grab anywhere. So you might be able to access behind the knees. You might grab onto your calves or ankles, or maybe even hold onto the outer edges of your feet. You don't necessarily have to keep your lower back on the ground, so you actually might have a little curve there, and that's fine. Now you could choose to stay here in stillness. Sometimes it's kind of fun to rock a little bit from side to side. You might even explore what it's like to straighten one leg as you bend the other and then switch sides. So it might even kind of tip you from side to side as if you're a baby, just kind of discovering your feet for the first time. So happy baby. Wherever you are, stay for 3 more breaths. And then 1 more breath. If you have your legs up in the air, start to let go of your grip and then soften your feet down to the ground. Now you get to choose here. You can stay with your legs bent if that feels really spacious on your low back. And sometimes I'll even end my practice in constructive rest or a version of it. So if you like the idea of bending your knees, then perhaps you bring your feet out a little bit wider on your mat and allow your knees to drift inward towards each other. Depending on your hips, they may or may not touch. Doesn't really matter if your knees touch or not, but go to a place where you feel space in your hips and low back. If this tends to put pressure on the front of your shins, then just pigeon toe your toes in a little bit, and sometimes that will relieve that pressure. Your hands could rest on your belly or by your sides, or if you just want to lay down, then bring your legs out long, a few feet apart. Arms could be by your sides or even up overhead. And then just allow your whole body to soften in, your whole body to be supported by the ground. All the muscles of your body start to let go. Allowing your face, your jaw, your neck, your shoulders, your arms, your hands, all softening down, doing a little less work for just a little while. See if you can let go of any gripping around your belly or your back. Perhaps your hips or your legs become softer. Even for now, your feet don't really have anything to do. They can just rest. Now, if you feel like following your breath is a comfortable place to be, then allow your attention to be placed on your breath. If you feel comfortable just noticing where your body is here and where you're in connection with the ground, then place your attention there. Or maybe just for a few minutes, you allow your mind to expand and wander. I'll give you a few minutes of quiet to integrate your practice. Begin to notice where your attention was placed. Sometimes the mind will wander. It'll wander into a million different places at times. And then just be aware of that our mind fluctuates, it changes. And then bring your attention back to here, your body here on the ground, laying here, your body breathing, thinking, and just being. Eventually start to wake up your physical body a little bit, so you might find a little wiggle of your fingers or toes. If your feet were out wide, start to walk them in a little bit. If your legs were out long, then rebend the knees. And find any kind of natural movement. That might be a stretch up overhead with your arms. It could be a rock of your head from side to side. And just becoming aware of your whole body. Whole body here. Eventually make your way over to a fetal posture. Rolling over to your side with your head supported by your arm, or maybe you have that blanket there. In your own time, press down into the floor and then rise up towards a comfortable seat. Give yourself time if you need it. It doesn't have to be graceful or perfect. If you like, you can bring your hands to the center of your heart space in this Anjali Mudra or Heart Mudra. Thank you for being here. May we live from the center of the heart. Take care, and I hope to see you soon.